sustainability means many things to many people, right? To you, at the core, what is it about?
Creating a world that thrives on the premise of equity. I'm generally a passionate person, so it used to upset me so much how the world was. I thought it was really chaotic. That's why I started looking to volunteering.
But if it's coming at the cost of losing the environment, if it's coming at the cost of people being ostracized from getting access to some of these resources, it wouldn't be sustainable.
I think that because consumption has exasperated, I really do blame it all on consumption. And so when you look at the 3 R's, or maybe they are more: refuse, reduce, recycle. For me, I'm heavy on reducing.
Welcome to the Brand Up Podcast, where we believe design should not just be for people, but for the earth as well. Join us on this exciting conversation where we explore the interaction between design and sustainability. Hi, Nabila.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm good. You?
I'm fine here as well. So I'm on your Instagram page and I see, first of all, I see Ken, a baby. And my experience with women using the title Ken, from King of Boys and Woman Ken, it gives a fiery kind of vibe. Why Ken and not a Queen?
I mean, you have to ask the people that gave me the name. So my name is Nabila.
Okay.
So the B, my friends just started calling me Kim. It was more embarrassing than that. It was a longer phrase. But I kept telling them it was embarrassing, and they just started calling me Kim Bibi. So it was just my friends that nicknamed me Bibi.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and I think I grew into the name.
Okay, that's fine. I see sustainability, I see local solutions. How did you get to this point?
Oh, how did I get to this point? I think it's been a long journey, but I think I'd start for it first from where I started.
Okay.
And it was on Legon campus, University of Ghana campus. And so I started by joining the University of Ghana plastic recycling project. Because, so I guess that's not the start. So the start is when I finished, I've said this story so many times, I'm tired of saying about it.
It's my first year in the story.
Oh, yeah. So when I finished SHS, senior high school in Ghana, you're meant to go to uni. I failed math, so I was at home writing off deck. In that time, I'd watch like a lot of news, a lot of CNN, Al Jazeera, and it used to upset me so much. I'm generally a passionate person, so it used to upset me so much how the world was. I thought it was really chaotic.
Okay.
So now I asked myself, okay, what could you do? Like, I just needed something to make myself feel better, I guess, and to make myself feel like I was doing something to make the world a better place. And that's why I started looking to volunteering. So when I entered uni, I was really excited to find the plastic recycling project, and I joined it on the publicity team. So I was on it from like level, I don't know if it was 100 to 400. I must have been 200 to 400, I don't know. And in that time, I became friends with the leader, the founder, Julius Jason. So he now also recommended an internship gig with Recycle Up Ghana.
Okay.
So I applied and I got in. When I got in, so now I'm like volunteer for plastic recycling project, intern at Recycle Up. That role, it was tasking and rewarding at the same time, because I got to be sort of like a project manager for the recycling activities of Sunflower School in Dakuman, sorry. So obviously working with children, working with waste pickers, working with the administration of the school, and just really becoming aware of what the issues, the barriers, and the nuances really are on the ground. And then whilst I was at Recycle Up Ghana, I became really buddies and partners with like Ninoy and Jeffrey. And then so I think right from there, we started Sustainability Week Accra on Legon campus. And we started it because we noticed that sustainability did not really have like a footing within the university campus. And we wanted to speak a language that they understood, because when we did our research, people just found it plain boring. And so that came like the whole weeks of activities with support from the Swiss Embassy. And the journey has been on and on and on till now.
Interesting, right? I'm talking about speaking the language of sustainability, which would be understandable to young people, university students. I think that is on the premise that we met, right, somewhere last year, because we were looking for like-minded organization and people to partner with on our Design the Next project. Design the Next is our impact project as Coptal, where we focus on moving the next change makers by design. So I bumped into your Instagram page, and I think a colleague of mine sent me that page, and it was worth giving it a shot, right? So I sent a DM, looked at how best we could have a win-win approach to a project that we both found passionate, right? And for us, like you mentioned, we observed in our various interactions, we've worked with a couple of agencies, UN teams that deal with sustainability impacts and things like that, right? And we observe that, these conversations don't go beyond boardrooms, right? It's usually the policy analysts, the scientific community, the researchers and all that, right? So we as Coptal were looking at how best we could break down these concepts, right, to young people, especially in underserved communities, right? And I think that was how we first met. We did that project successfully and all that. Sustainability means many things to many people, right? And to you, at the core, what is it about?
I think at the core is just creating a world that is healthy and fair. You know, people say, okay, that's naive. Like, what is fair? The world isn't fair, right? But so then that's what we say, okay, creating a world that thrives on the premise of equity, attempting to create a world that runs on the ethos of equity. Because where there's an imbalance, you will find an unsustainable world. Where production is concentrated on one end, you would find that certain resources, be it people or planet, have to pay for said concentrated production. Where wealth is concentrated on one end, you would notice that there are demographics that are paying for said wealth to be concentrated where it is at. So for me, at its core, sustainability is just attempting to create a world that is healthy and fair, where each and every one of us has access to the very things that secure us a life of dignity.
That's spot on, right? Talking about injustices, talking about how one party pays if another party is becoming a beneficiary. And I think it is on us as an individual and also as a collective, right? Be it organizations, be it companies, to actually prioritize this, right? Because at the end of the day, some would put profit first, right? But if it's coming at the cost of losing the environment, if it's coming at the cost of people being ostracized from getting access to some of these resources, it wouldn't be sustainable. Because an element of being sustainable is also engaging in practices today that wouldn't be at the cost of tomorrow. So businesses, brands should think about impact.
Definitely.
That is it. And we have an interesting story here at Coptal, where in one of the days here, we were looking at, beyond our day-to-day work, how can we best serve our community? How can we think impact? And we actually have an ambitious goal to impact over 100,000 people by 2030.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's interesting.
Exciting.
Yes, it is exciting. At the same time, it causes us to stay alert and awake all the time, because that will be about 6 years from now. However, we are not waiting to reach the target on the 6th year. It starts right today. It starts with what we do and all that. Why do you think businesses should, or brands should, think beyond profit and consider the people, the environment, think impact actually? Why is it necessary for businesses and brands to do that?
I think it's important for businesses and brands to do that because they do not exist in a vacuum. Without said resources, businesses cannot operate. So the resources could be natural resources or human resources. The rate at which we are consuming and taking from the world, that's people and planet, is alarming. People would often say that, oh, the world would reset itself. It's always done so. I'm like, well, that's true. But if you look back in history, have you ever had a time where you've seen such unprecedented levels of accumulation or consumption? You really haven't. Again, when you look in history and you look at our economic systems, you would notice that at every point in time we have a great crash. We're probably existing within one right now, right? You'd notice that still within the great crash, there are some that are able to benefit where they accumulate so much at the expense of others. You would see the ripple effect of those crashes. I'm thinking, maybe naive, but there could be a time where we experience a great crash and we probably never come back from it. In any case, if exponential growth, the overaccumulation of resources, is what is causing these great crashes, how about we reimagine trade and our economic system? Because there's always been trade. However, the system that we're seeing today hasn't always existed. And the system that we're seeing today is putting into jeopardy the lives of people and the life of the planet. Again, I think COVID taught us one thing, and maybe the business is one thing. Businesses crashed. Some have revived, some really haven't. But businesses crashed. And the reason why they did is because people didn't have monies in their pockets to spend. In economics, velocity of money is a thing. Whether the money is circulating in your system, how much of it is circulating in your system, it all matters. Especially for young economies like African economies, like the Ghanaian economy. We need the money to circulate. Now, if there's vast inequality, money can just not circulate. When power and monopoly is concentrated elsewhere, often outside of our borders, and I was thinking about it the other day, where we cannot afford to produce. And so we're always, sending out foreign exchange, and it isn't coming in. It is hurting our economy. The world has risen up since 2015, after the MDGs to the SDGs, to say we want to see an equitable world. We've seen some of these companies, some of them are accused of greenwashing, back these campaigns up, the SDG campaign up. We've seen the UN do the same, and we've seen certain world powers do the same. They need to put their monies where their mouth is at. The people who sat down and put those together, they saw the need for us to address those 17 goals. If businesses don't care, especially the corporate businesses do not care, we cannot reach the SDGs. And we run the risk of, I assume, a greater crash. I don't think there will be annihilation where we all die, but I think there would be a huge, huge crash. So as if we haven't seen some in Bengal before, we have. So it may not look like the Bengalese famine, but it could have its own structure. I don't know if businesses care, but I know that a business is not static. It has human beings and emotions, and those human beings have connections in the rest of the human community. They need to care just because they are human and they exist in this ecosystem.
I totally agree with you on the fact that businesses and brands need to care. Talking about we actually have a lot of reimagination to do, rethink a lot, redo a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
And referencing back to last year, our events that we did together, the focus was on reimagining learning spaces, right? Because nothing can take place not within the confines of a space where people can think, especially young people, right? Because we usually have a saying that, young people are the future leaders, blah, blah, blah. But the future is not a place we go to, right?
Yep.
The future is a result of our actions today.
Yep.
So as a team, as Copter, we put ourselves in an intentional space, right? Mm-hmm. Because many brands and businesses do it as a CSO.
Yeah.
We have a corporate social, CSR rather, sorry. Corporate social responsibility. It's like a box they are checking, right? Yeah. I have to do ABC to be on track on our impact goals and all that. But we had to look at it from a different way, right? Is it authentic? Are these things that we really relate to?
Yeah.
Are these things that we think have an impact on us as individuals and as a collective? Mm-hmm. So I think it's very prudent, right, for businesses and brands to look beyond ticking boxes, right? You have a CSR, it's fine and all that, but that is not it.
And it's often so easy to see through those who are ticking boxes.
Yeah.
I think after the event, I said to you that your event didn't look like one of those where they were ticking the boxes.
Yeah.
Because when you're dealing with human beings and you put heart and soul into the dealing or the situation, it's evident, you can see. And I have to give that up to design the next. It was differentiated. I think I posted it to my Instagram and I said, well, that's a model of, you don't want to call it so, but for the sake of the conversation, CSR, that other companies should really look into.
That's fine.
Yeah.
How did we get here? How did issues of impact, issues of environmental concerns, how did we get here?
Oh, how did we get here? Did it get so bad?
Yeah, how did it get so
I
bad?
think it's always been bad, but I think that because consumption has exasperated, I really do blame it all on consumption. And so when you look at the 3 R's, or maybe they are more: refuse, reduce, recycle. For me, I'm heavy on reducing.
Okay.
Because recycle and refuse still accommodate the production. The recycle and reuse still accommodate production and still assume that there's some outlet for the excesses of the things that we are producing. But when I used to work with Recycle, we had a term called, there's nowhere called throw away. Because where are you going to throw it away? Into the oceans? Well, you're depleting the coral and the resources of the ocean, and it's going to come back to us.
Yeah.
How we got here, I think, is just this penchant for profit, surplus, and fueled by consumption, right? The need to have it all. Fast fashion has got to be one of it. The need to follow trends and to always be on trend. And for the surplus accumulator to also take advantage of that, is okay. There's pumping, and there's no end. So I really think how we got here, it's just this new, it's not this new model, but this model of consumption that we are all practicing, this model of production that the people who want the surplus, big corporations, want to drive. I think that's how we really have gotten to this very point, where everybody is alarmed and we're saying, hey, if you don't pipe down, the next century will not be looking good for us if we're alive or for our kids. So some are not even saying a century. We're seeing some predictions around 2050, some around 2030. And we're seeing some manifestations of, for lack of a better word, our carelessness or business as usual right now.
There is always a side of which we are either part of the problem or part of the solution. And I've observed that being in a design space, usually one of the biggest problems comes from the design side of it, where every single item that we use is designed, right?
Yep.
So what materials are being used? What is the longevity plan do we have for the product? What exactly are we, what should be the end, like you said, there's no thing like throw away. You're either throwing it into the sea, which is also a resource, you're throwing it on dump site, which is also a resource. It ends up still in a place. There's no place like a dump site, right? It comes back to us. That is noted from a design side. So here, what are some of the practical ways? How do we inculcate thinking impact in our everyday lives, right? Because like I mentioned earlier on, we usually build a whole cloud of terminologies, cloud of jargons here and that. And at the end of the day, we lose the core messages, right? Something as simple as being able to separate waste, right? These are some of the low-hanging fruit, some of the things. I mean, you might make a case that it might not overall have a very big impact, right? However, we believe small steps matter.
They do.
Right? Small steps do matter. So I would want to find out from you, what are some of the simple steps? What are some of the practical and relatable things that we can do as we think impact, as we live sustainably? What are some of the things we can do?
So just to piggyback off what you said about design, I'm big on design when I'm talking about sustainability. the Airbnb founder for Airbnb, Brian, I think he said he said somewhere that he studied industrial design when he was in high school. So I think it was one of the best things for him, because piggyback off what you're saying, the reason why we are where we are at with the things we consume and even disposal is design.
Yeah.
So one, what are some of the things that we can do? Be intentional at the design stage.
Be intentional at the design stage.
We need to be intentional about the design stage. At the design stage, what are we designing? What are the materials that are going into this design? Allow me to use fashion clothes, and allow me to punch a fast fashion.
They will come for you.
They need to come for me. Fast fashion, the whole story behind fast fashion is bizarre. From them stealing designs from people in the, the average person in the community, when they could be paying them their due to use their designs, to exploiting labor of the minority, to using bad materials that release harmful chemicals into the environment and on your bodies when you actually wear them, to those materials being so frail and fragile that they cannot be upcycled, they cannot be recycled, because the material itself was obsolete at design. So if you ask me, one, design. At design, let's be very intentional. Now, let me leave fast fashion and come to the green side. So one of the reasons why we started GoTo was because we noticed that on the green side, there were innovations, there were people producing stuff. The problem was with the design, because it was designed for the green person, the person who gets it. But you see something like the aesthetic of something. Let me use the iPhone as unethical as it is, but people are drawn to the aesthetic of the iPhone. Yeah. There's something about the aesthetic of the iPhone that makes people not want to drop it, want to have it, and all the likes. The green entrepreneurs and the innovators, they don't factor that in. But if somebody looks at something and it doesn't nourish them aesthetically, they're likely not going to take care of said thing, no matter how good the thing would be in itself. So I think one of the practical things we can do is, one, be intentional at the design stage. Two, be intentional about where our money goes. I think we all have values. Huh? I mean, call me naive, but I think we all have values here. When I say be intentional about how we consume, who are you giving your money to? Do you have a choice to give your money to somebody who cares about the environment, whose values are in line with yours? If you do, you should give your money to said person. Do you want to give your money to a local artisan who's just trying to make ends meet? Or do you want to give your money to some greedy corporate person who's just looking for surplus to buy another island somewhere? We need to tap into our value systems and ask ourselves what really matters. So again, be intentional about how you're consuming. Think about the end stage of this thing. What is disposal going to look like for this? Is it going to end up in the ocean, or the material itself is robust enough to live another life if you give it? So for me, it's really at the core intentionality, but with design and then with how we consume. And then really holding those who need to be held accountable. And sometimes the shouting and the signing of the petitions and the likes, it probably doesn't get to them. But for somebody who's chasing profits, where do you want to hit them? Where it hits, in their pockets. Don't give your monies to those people. Don't give your monies to the people they're connected to. If you've got the choice, sometimes you really haven't got the choice, but if you've got the choice, let's collectively send that message, and I think they would get it.
Talking about choices, unfortunately, we don't seem to have a choice. I mean, there's always a choice out there, but I mean, our part of the world, since we don't produce a lot on our own, we are forced on the consumption side. Talking about intentionality.
I don't think they're forced, but yeah.
It's arguable to an extent, right? Yeah. I really like the point about the look and feel of things, right? Where you talk about the aesthetics, where you talk about the intentionality at every single point. We have worked with a number of nonprofits, and we actually have a program out there where we want to support some NGOs, especially with their brand, with their strategy, with their design. What we observed is that NGOs oftentimes like to cry a lot, like living by the begging bowl. They always create a look and feel that is not positive. It's always we are begging. It's always we are looking for funds. It's always the case of a poor African, right? It goes back to the Al Jazeera and BBC issue that's the same way Africa is being portrayed, right? So we made it a good point that storytelling, your brand, your identity, your strategy, it shouldn't scream of being always sad, always a pauper and all that. I think those times are way behind us, right? So we actually make it a point that at the design stage, how you show up is definitely how you are respected. How you show up is what informs perception. To be honest, we are all tired of those begging, things like that, right? We are looking at ways that we could tell stories that are glorifying, right? Stories that are compelling, that moves us to action. Why do you think is the case that most NGOs go the begging routes?
Yeah, because you've not got the money and you're looking for the money. I think that's at the core of it. That's what it is. And also there's the inclination to not look like you have it together so that the person that wants to bless you would look to bless you more. But no, I definitely agree with you. There was a research that I saw before Safe March, and it said that the remittances budget, as in the amount of money that was sent from diasporans or Africans in the global north, from the global north to the global south, the budget was about 2 times or 3 times more than the global aid budget, right? So now when we talk about development, and when it comes to NGO work, we call that development work. When it comes to development, there are certain types, there are all types of development, but if people are sending in money from the global north to the south, and the people that are benefiting from said monies are using the monies to buy pads and little things of dignity, then the global north is contributing to the development story of the global south. So basically, development aid is less, as in the one that the West comes in and says, oh, here's this money, is less than the remittances money. So I was thinking to myself, there's power in actually collaboration, and there's power in the hands of the Black person, and we're not all the way a sob story, and we are not all the way a sorry story. And I think that what you said is right, but I think that it will also take a collective pushback from the development and the grassroots workers in the global south to say that, to actually own it and say, hey, this is what we need to do. There's something called the SDGs even. There's something called a globalized world, and this is what we need to do to get a dignified globalized world. In any case, the people who give to us, NGOs in the global south, the grassroots in Africa, they take a lot from us as well. We've got to be honest. They take maybe a lot more than they give us. So I agree with you that it's time for us to redefine this story as, even though we're struggling, not one of solely struggle, but one of struggle and hope. I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, struggle and hope, and that makes sense. Yeah. Talking about partnerships, right? We face the problems together. But when it comes to the solution side, we usually want to operate in silos. We don't open up a lot. And
you think
it's,
so?
Yes, to an extent, where people would want to own, this is my project, this is my focus, right? And I have a belief that once we face the problems together, we should also find the solutions together, right? Because no one is totally immune from suffering from the brunt of, our various fragmented approaches, right? So partnerships is one thing that is on our heart as a team at Corps, especially when it comes to impact projects, right? Yeah. Do you think businesses, right, should first of all look at beyond their confines, right? For instance, if an NGO or if another entity has an expertise in a particular space, right, if it aligns with your values, right? Do you think it is is it mandatory for every business or for every brand should look at ways that they can live out their values?
At Go-To, we're built on the back of community and collaboration. And it's because when I started Go-To, I started it with the knowledge. Mind you, I had been in the space for a long time. And I noticed, for those who know the story, I was like, there isn't a lack of innovation. There isn't a lack of solution. There isn't a lack of products. What there is a lack of is a united front. Because my thing is, when you come to Ghana or Africa, because we are at the bottom, taking siloed approaches to anything means that we'll continue to go into the bottom.
Yep.
We, more than ever, need to come together as one, as a unified force. That way it's easier to take on our challenges and also to take on the global front. So I definitely think that, especially for us Ghanaians and Africans, for especially people in the nonprofit space that go to like projects like Design the Next, and for a business like Cure Sculptor, who is heavy on community and impact, you need collaboration. Because even it defeats your almost the essence and your purpose that you see you're writing for if you want to move in a siloed manner. It doesn't give you momentum to create as much impact as you could create if you collaborated with people. So from my opinion, yes, in Ghana, in Africa, in the global south, now more than ever, we need to come together as a force so that we can drive momentum from each other, our expertise, our resources, whatever that is.
Yeah, so I totally agree with you on the fact that we shouldn't take the siloed approach, right? And also, we can all start from where we are. We can start from the little things. It might not necessarily have to be something that is grandiose or something that is stellar or anything, right? We believe
Stellar, yes.
Well, to an extent, but we believe in small actions, big impacts, right? Where you break things down into, bite size, right? Because if you sometimes talk about things in a big manner, we lose essence of what we are supposed to do. So if you remember, in our event last year, we looked at something as simple as, I've used a bottle. I've bought whether a drink, water, whatever it is. What do I do with a bottle? As a young student or as a learner, at that level, I can just use the scissors to cut the bottle, use the zipper on it, use it as a pencil case. In that case, you are teaching young people, right? 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds, how their first thought shouldn't be throwing away something, but looking at what life can I give? That's the second life. What else can I do with the material that I have in mind? Like I mentioned earlier, the future is not a place we go. It's the result of what we do today. What are some of the simple, practical things that you think can be thought, can be done, especially for young people? We really focus much more on young people because once again, we believe, are we part of the young people?
Yeah, of course we are.
And I'm like, we are borderline.
No.
Well, it is what it is. Yeah.
We're young people.
Yeah, I so much believe in young people, right? Because, not because there is probably that age being the best age to have ideas, blah, blah, blah. But in 10, 15, 20 years to come, we are going to face the consequences of what happens today.
Yeah.
So no matter how small action it is, I believe we should shoot. So what are some of the things that can be done so that whoever is listening to us, whoever is watching us, can leave the conversation with some practical things to do?
Yeah. So top of my head, with food, the practical things to do is, first of all, not to take much more than you need. But if you do take much more than you need, if you've got like livestock around your house or you've got like a pet, just find a way to leave whichever waste for said livestock. Because waste for you may look like, oh, I'm full, or I'm no longer craving this. Yeah, you can give that to a pet or a livestock or whatever that is. Other than that, you can compost. You can always compost your food. Now that leads me back to, gardening at home. like those plastic bottles you're talking about, the yellow jerry can bottles and the likes, you can always get some soil. The thing I'd advise most people to grow would be herbs, because you don't really want
herbs.
Rosemary, thyme and the likes, those ones. They're so easy to grow. They don't need as much maintenance. They're so easy to grow. I mean that. Mushrooms, so easy to grow. You can always get that around. Those waste plastic bottles, even metal cans, you can always put in some soil. Your compost will help, grow them faster. So that's on the food end. That's one thing I'd say. On the fashion end, that's the clothes swap. So that's something that we do. I won't say quarterly, but as and when the universe speaks to us. So keep an eye on our page. We've got an Instagram page, goto.gh. So we always announce on there we have the clothes swap. At GoTo also, we take the indigenous Ghanaian authentic route, where Ghanaians have always been authentically sustainable, right? So now that you're asking me this question, what are the practical things you do? Probably look at how your grandma lives, your indigenous grandma lives, or probably take a look at how they live in your village, because GoTo takes a cue or a lot of cues from that way of living, and we imbibe that with some contemporary finesse to design the community engagements that we do. So the clothes swap, that looks like your typical hand-me-down system.
Okay.
When your cousin will give you their shirt, or your grandma will give you her dress, and, often at our clothes swaps, we'll have like local artisans there. So that also looks like the alteration, the culture. Yeah. Embrace it once again. The shoemaker culture. Embrace this once again. I made my skirt from...
before we go on set, you told me about it.
From trousers. So these were ill-fitting trousers. I had them sitting there for a while. I was frustrated with them, but I loved the fabric. And one of the tailors at our events just turned it into a gorgeous skirt for me. So on the fashion end, that's one way you can be practical. Don't throw away your stuff. Reimagine them. Sometimes this skirt may no longer be fancy to you. You can always dye it. And you can make at-home dyes. Really, just
get some DIYs.
Yeah. You can get some flowers, some nice pigmented flowers, and just soak them up. Or look up at YouTube. You can always dye these. When it comes to replacing plastics, beeswax, is such a valuable resource, because you can just melt that, put some prints on it, and it becomes like a wrap that you can use to wrap your food. You can use to wrap other stuff as an alternative to plastic. So it's a lot. I won't bother people watching this, but I'll definitely say that take a cue from your authentic Ghanaian way of life. That is sustainability at its core. GoTo takes cues from that way of living. And as a Ghanaian, please always bear in mind that sustainability for you is not imported or should not be imported, because sustainability for you is your background. It's the background that you have forgotten about. So if you're looking for practical ways, please look back to self, and you find the practical ways.
Look back to self to find practical ways. Yeah. That also requires new thinking, new appreciation of things. Reimagination. I mean, that's the right word to put it. It's been nice having you here, and the conversations could go on and on and on and on, because it's something that, beyond me, right? As a team, as Sculptor, like I mentioned, we are big on impact, right? So conversations like that, we get a lot of ideas, right? And we could talk and talk and talk. Yeah. We also believe in action as well. Yeah. So as we talk more, we act accordingly. Yeah. Right. So if there is any organization or anyone who would want to embark on a project, right? Per what we've discussed, first of all, it's possible that you can do it, right? Mm-hmm. Look beyond the fact that sometimes it might not even be costly. It's just about finding the low-hanging fruits. Yeah. It can be done. We started about 2 years, this should be our third year, from a point where this wasn't part of our core office. But today we can proudly say we are I mean, saying you're an ethical business sounds cliche, right? But it is truly, yes, it's a value that we really hold high over here. And we think you should all think impact. And together, we can move the next change makers by design. Just remember that every single thing you do matters, and you can be part of those making the change. Thank you for joining us on this episode. Until we meet again, keep designing with your heart.